Welcome back, my dear listener. Today I'm going to tell you the story of a seemingly innocuous family portrait that arrived in Hollow Creek, holding dark secrets that would unravel the bonds of family and plunge them into a nightmare they could never escape. If you enjoy this story, give it a like, turn on notifications, and subscribe. And remember, I'm always listening. Suggest a story if you dare, and I'll craft a special one just for you. Now get ready, and follow me down into the darkness. In the small town of Hollow Creek, a family lived in a crumbling old house. This house was not ordinary. It was a peculiar place that creaked and groaned like an old man. The floorboards squeaked underfoot, and the wind howled through the cracks in the walls, creating sounds that echoed like whispers in the dark. The shadows inside seemed to dance and flutter in the corners, making it feel alive in a strange way. The family was comprised of 4 members: a father named Mr. Thompson, a mother named Mrs. Thompson, their daughter named Lily, and their son named Max. They were a close-knit family who shared their joys and sorrows, but also had their fair share of secrets. One sunny afternoon, while vegetables simmered on the stove and the sun streamed through the dusty window panes, a peculiar package was delivered to their doorstep. It was wrapped in thick, dark paper that looked like it had been pulled from an old journal. The package seemed to vibrate in the air, almost pulsating with an unsettling aura that made Lily's skin crawl. She and Max were playing outside when they noticed it. "What could it be?" Max asked, squinting at the package with curiosity. His eyes sparkled with a mix of wonder and dread. "Let's go see," Lily replied, her heart racing with excitement and a wee bit of fear. The children dashed inside to find their parents already gathered around the table, inspecting the mysterious parcel. The air grew still as Mr. Thompson carefully unwrapped it, revealing an ornate family portrait. As they took the portrait out of the package, the air turned noticeably colder. The image was beautiful in a twisted way, showing the family, albeit a slightly different one, standing together, smiling in their best clothes. Each face in the portrait wore a wide grin, their eyes glimmering as though they held secrets. But when Max looked closely, he felt a small shiver run down his spine. It was almost as if the faces were too happy, too perfect, and the way they seemed to follow him as he moved gave him goosebumps. "What do you think?" Mrs. Thompson asked, tilting her head as she studied the painting. "It looks interesting," said Mr. Thompson, trying to sound optimistic. "We should hang it up." And so, that evening, after dinner, they did. They decided to hang the portrait in the living room, right above the fireplace. The warmth of the crackling fire contrasted sharply with the cold sensation that radiated from the portrait. As they stepped back to admire it, the shadows in the room seemed to stretch, wrapping around the edges of the painting like dark vines. The laughter of their family echoed off the walls, yet a strange sensation settled in the pit of Lily and Max's stomach, a feeling they couldn't explain but instinctively trusted. Later that night, as everyone settled in their rooms, Lily found it hard to sleep. As she lay in bed, she began to hear whispers drifting through the hallway. They were soft at first, like faint rustling leaves, but as she strained to listen, they grew louder, taking on a hushed tone, almost like someone was calling for her. Intrigued and unnerved, she tiptoed out of her room and crept toward the living room. What she saw struck her with a jolt of fear. The portrait seemed to shift under her gaze. The smiles that once appeared joyful had tightened into tight-lipped grins, their once warm eyes gleaming unnaturally, cold and hollow. "What is happening?" she thought, fear bubbling inside her. She reached out hesitantly, wanting to touch the surface of the painting, oblivious to the chill creeping into her bones. When Lily's hand brushed against the frame, the room felt colder than before. She could have sworn the faces in the painting twisted slightly, morphing into grotesque shapes that flickered in and out of focus. Stumbling back, her heart thundered in her chest. She hurried back to her room, the weight in her chest churning like a storm. That night, the image of the twisted smiles haunted her dreams, filling her mind with eerie laughter that echoed long after she closed her eyes. Max, too, felt a pull toward the portrait, but unlike Lily, he tried hard to shake it off. At school, his friends had teased him about believing in spooky stories. "Ghosts and monsters aren't real," he told himself. "They're just tales to scare little kids." He kept quiet about the portrait, not wanting to sound foolish. Days passed, though, and he noticed strange changes creeping into their home. The lamps would flicker without any reason, casting jagged shadows that danced across the walls and sent chills down his spine. There were times when he heard deep, guttural sounds echoing from somewhere deep inside the house, like a malevolent creature that stirred when no one was looking. As the weeks rolled on, things grew eerier in startling ways. The portraits of happy moments from their old lives seemed to shift subtly, losing their vibrancy. The family's joyful laughter, usually so bright and crisp, faded into an unsettling silence that draped over the house, heavy like a thick fog. One night, as Max peeked at the portrait during the witching hour, he was convinced that the picturesque scene now looked far more sinister. The faces twitched, as the painting seemed to draw in an unseen force that made the air thick and charged. One evening, while the family gathered for dinner, they realized something dreadful. A family member had gone missing from the portrait, a realization that crept in slowly, like a shadow that caught their attention. Amid the chaos of plates clattering and laughter filling the air, the absence went unnoticed for a moment. But when Lily looked up, her gasp echoed in the room. The side of the painting where her father stood was now empty. Panic swept through her like a sudden gust of wind. "Where's Dad?" she exclaimed, her voice trembling with fear. The room fell silent, and all eyes turned to the painting as if drawn by an invisible thread. The family jumped to their feet, hearts racing, staring in shock. Max exchanged a fearful glance with Lily, and their mother twisted her lips, uncertainty clouding her gentle features. Mr. Thompson gave a smile, attempting to lift the mood, but that smile quickly transformed into something unrecognizable, pairing distress with confusion. It was clear that smile didn't reach his eyes. That night, as darkness settled over their old house enveloped in an almost unnatural silence, the chilling whispers returned. Lily and Max lay in their beds, wide awake, unable to sleep as an unsettling feeling lingered in the air. The shadows crept closer to their rooms, twisting and swirling like malevolent spirits, making them shudder. They could now hear clearer, guttural sounds that echoed down the hallway, prickling their skin. With dread pulsing through them, they felt a compulsion to glance at the portrait once more. When they finally did, their breaths caught in their throats. Another family member was missing. Now, only their mother and Max remained in the portrait, their faces surrounded by haunting shadows that seemed to flicker and warp. Panic rose within them. Only chilling laughter filled their ears like a ghostly echo. Caught in a whirlwind of fear, they rushed to their parents' bedroom, hearts racing, desperate to find their father. But when they arrived, only their mother sat there, staring blankly at the portrait. Her once warm eyes had taken on an eerie, vacant expression. "Mom!" Max cried loudly, breathless and terrified. "Please, look! There's something wrong with the picture!" But their mother didn't respond. Instead, her eyes gleamed in a sinister way, as if shadows had swallowed her soul. Darkness seemed to loom over her, pressing down, filling the room with a thick, chilling fear. They stepped back, a sense of dread rippling through their hearts. It was at that moment Max realized they were losing more than just family members. They were losing their sanity, their hope, and the sense of safety that had once enveloped them like a warm blanket. The night stretched long, filled with dread that wrapped around the family like a putrid shroud. What had come into their home? Why was this dreadful transformation happening to their family? When morning broke, pale light filtering through the dusty windows, Lily and Max stumbled into the living room, hearts heavy with dread. Their mother was missing, leaving only their father sitting in the living room looking worried and troubled. He gazed up at the empty space where the once cheerful portrait dangled, feeling the weight of an unspoken horror. The chilling feeling that hung in the air became palpable, suffocating them like a nightmare come to life. With bated breath, they stared at the portrait that still hung high on the wall, mocking them with its faces, twisted, contorted, and uncanny. What began as a portrait of familial joy had shifted into something dark and dreadful, unraveling the very essence of their family. The bond of family was already beginning to unravel, and from that moment, none of them would ever be the same again. Days turned into weeks, and dread wrapped itself tighter around Lily and Max. Every single day, they would stand before the large, old portrait that hung in the living room. Their hearts felt heavy with fear, as if something dark and menacing had settled over their home like a thick, gray blanket. The painted figures within the frame seemed to watch their every move, their grotesque faces twisted in pain and sorrow. They seemed to be trying to cry out for help, but no sound ever escaped their lips. Their father worked hard to keep their spirits high, telling them stories and playing games. But despite his best efforts, the growing number of shadows loomed large in their home, darkening the walls and creeping inside their heads. Max spent countless sleepless nights staring at the cracks in his ceiling, contemplating the terrifying changes surrounding them. The whispers from the painting seemed to dance through the night, echoing his deepest fears and worries. Whenever he stood alone in the soft evening light, his eyes would be drawn to the portrait, fascinated, yet horrified. He noticed that the brush strokes were strangely fluid, almost alive, the shadows twisted into jagged, angular shapes. To Max, it felt like the painting wanted to consume them, to pull him and Lily into its dark world. One night, as the clock struck midnight, something unusual happened. A howling wind swept through their creaking house, making the windows rattle and the lights flicker. Max jolted upright in his bed, clutching his blanket tightly around him. He could hear the sound of the wind creeping through the cracks of the old house, a sound so eerie it resembled a putrid breath. He felt a strong pull, an urge to check the portrait again, driving him to move his feet despite the sweaty fear that gripped him. As he cautiously approached the painting, he noticed something alarming. The faint outlines of faces were beginning to form within the shadows in the corners of the painting. An unsettling chill crept over him, sending a shiver down his spine. It was almost as if the darkness itself had fingers, reaching out to him from within the canvas. The faces grimaced in agony, their mouths twisted in grotesque shapes, as if they were trying to scream without sound. The sight was too much for Max, and he felt panic rising in his chest. "Lily!" Max called out, his voice trembling and breaking. In a few moments, his sister appeared at the door, her long hair wild and her eyes wide with fear. "Look at that!" He pointed to the painting, dread pooling in his stomach. But as Lily stepped into the room, she flinched at the sight. "What is that?" she gasped, her voice quivering. The grotesque faces strained harder against the canvas, as if begging for release. They twisted and swirled, flickering like flames, before growing still again, locking their eerie gaze on the children. Max felt a heaviness in the air, a forbidden weight pressing down on his shoulders. "I don't like it," Lily whispered, taking a cautious step backward. Her eyes were wide, brimming with fear. "It feels wrong, like it's hungry. Hungry for something, or someone." Max nodded, a feeling of urgent agreement coursing through him. "We should try to take it down," he said. The thought of the portrait looming over them was unbearable. They decided then and there that they had to rid themselves of this haunting presence, feeling the weight of their parents' absence keenly. With determination, they pulled at the edges of the frame. Each tug felt like risking a cursed agreement. But no matter how hard they pulled, it would not budge. It was as if the painting had a life of its own, fighting against them. The darkness pulsated and twisted tighter around the edges, wrapping around them like an invisible chain. The air grew thick and cloying, wrapping around their throats and making it hard to breathe. Their annoyance swiftly slipped into sheer terror. Suddenly, as they looked closer at the painting, they realized what was happening. The painting had shifted once again. Now only Max's face appeared within it, staring back at them. A chill shot through Lily, her heart dropping like a rock. "Where's Dad?" she cried, shaking her brother by his shoulders. She dashed around the room, searching desperately for any sign of their father, but he was nowhere to be found. "Oh no!" Max trembled, panic flooding his veins. "It's taking everyone! We have to leave!" Fear gripped them, and they rushed down the hall, driven by a desperate need to escape. Lily clasped her brother's hand tightly, her heart racing as they stumbled down the stairs, hope flickering dimly in the face of all-consuming shadows and the terrible omen that loomed over them. But just then, a thought struck Lily like a sharp, jagged knife. What if it's not just the portrait? What if it's the house too? Her eyes widened with worry, and she felt the weight of the walls closing in around them. She didn't want to be trapped here, a prisoner to these overwhelming shadows. As they searched for a way out, they dashed from room to room, but every door seemed to lead them back into the horrific grip of their reality. The portraits staring back with hollow eyes, dark shadows creeping closer with each frantic heartbeat. Chairs. Just then, a guttural sound echoed from a dark corner of the living room. It was like a demon's laugh, deep and sinister, reverberating through their bones. They froze in fear, unable to look away, as jagged shadows began to emerge from the floor, contorting into monstrous shapes. The portraits in the room seemed to twist and flicker with rage, their painted figures mingling with the shadows, turning their features into the very nightmares the children had been trying so desperately to escape. "We have to go," Max cried out, finally breaking free from his paralysis. He yanked Lily toward the front door, but it slammed shut before they could reach it, the sound echoing ominously in the thick air. Something was keeping them inside, something dark and powerful. The children screamed, filled with blood-curdling worry as they rushed back toward their only sanctuary, the portrait in the living room. Maybe, just maybe, it was where everything had begun, and where they could end this horrible nightmare. As they reached the portrait, they felt the energy of their home surging around them, a heavy weight born of sadness and despair. The room darkened, the light flickering, making the shadows dance in terrifying patterns. The whispers became clear and louder, echoing ominously, "Join us forever." The painted faces twisted into gruesome expressions of longing, mixed with ravenous hunger, as they reached out to the children. Max and Lily exchanged terrified glances, the weight of fear pressing down upon them like an unbearable load. "We can't!" Lily shouted, squeezing her brother tight, willing him not to let go. They were not ready to give in to the shadows' calls. As they turned to run again, they felt the familiar grasp of despair taking hold, threatening to drag them back into the painting's terrible depths. The world around them twisted into a sinister blur, everything spinning like a dark whirlpool. With every ounce of willpower they could muster, they urged themselves to resist, but the shadows lurked just out of sight, teetering on the brink with ominous intent. Suddenly, something unexpected happened. They found themselves standing alone in the living room again, a single, flickering light casting eerie shapes on the wall. Max's heart sank as he took in the familiar sight. "It doesn't want us to leave," he whispered, his voice heavy with defeat. The portrait loomed over them like a demoniac entity, silently watching, breathing disappointment at their futile attempts to escape. With one final glance at the portrait, a haunting realization struck Max like lightning. The truth had been there all along. The faces on the canvas were their family, trapped forever within its cursed bounds. He instinctively reached out to the canvas, his finger grazing its slick surface like it was a charged wire. In an instant, a surge of pain shot through him. A vision flooded his mind. Darkness consuming the faces, merging them into grotesque entities one after another in a horrific dance of despair. "No! No!" Lily screamed, her own eyes wide with fear and horror as she realized what was happening. Max's terrified scream echoed in the air, and in that moment, the shadows surged forward, their forms shifting into jagged creatures, howling with fury. The walls of the living room began to close in on them, shadows creeping up toward the children, determined to claim what was rightfully theirs. But deep within the recesses of their hearts, something stirred. A flicker of bravery ignited in Max. "We won't let you take us!" he shouted defiantly, his voice rising as he pulled Lily closer. Together they stood their ground against the encroaching darkness, the fear in their hearts transformed into a protective warmth around them. And that was when the room exploded into blinding light, illuminating the dark shapes and forcing them backward. The shadows, frightened and angry, retreated from the glare, howling with a terrible roar. The portraits shuddered and twisted, their painted faces contorting in fury. But Max and Lily could feel their own strength surging from within. Together, hand in hand, they had summoned the courage to fight for their freedom. This was not the end of their nightmare, but it was a beginning, an opportunity to defy the shadows that wished to consume them. They would find a way to banish the darkness and uncover the secrets buried deep within the haunting portrait. For they were not alone. Their love for each other would guide them through the shadows, leading them toward the light. As they held onto that warmth, they knew their journey had only just begun. Lily felt the icy grip of darkness fill the room, thick and heavy like a damp fog. It struck at them, slashing through the air with a chilling roar, as if a terrible beast had awakened from a long slumber. Just when they thought they might lose each other, a flicker of determination ignited within Lily. "We can't let it take us!" she shouted, her voice full of defiance. Somehow, she knew they had to fight back, or they would be lost forever in the suffocating shadows. They stumbled back toward the portrait, desperate to find a way to make sense of the horror surrounding them. Maybe we can free them," Max suggested, excitement bubbling in his voice. He pointed at the swirling chaos of darkness. It was a terrible thought, but it had to be worth a try. They had to be strong and break the unholy bond that twisted through their family and gripped their home so tightly. "No, they're trapped!" The shadows screeched, their voices echoing like an angry wind. A wave of terror washed over them, crashing through their hearts. "They belong to us now!" It struck so deep that Lily fell to her knees, and tears ran down her cheeks like tiny rivers. What had they done to deserve this? The thought pressed heavily on her chest. As they dared to draw nearer to the portrait, they could feel their family's identity stirring deep inside, pulling them toward the image in the swirling darkness. each agonizing scream echoing in their minds like a haunting melody. But Lily refused to give in to despair. She took a deep breath, feeling her heart pounding fiercely. "We can do it! We must free them! Their love is stronger than this darkness!" Inside her, something ignited, a blazing desire to pull her family from the depths of this cursed nightmare. The kind of love that felt as warm as sunshine even in the coldest winter. Together, they stepped toward the painting, their palms pressing against its cool surface. The shadows curled around them like twisting snakes, crashing forward with grotesque faces and sinister grins. But the bond of family surged stronger inside them. "We won't let you win," Lily cried, her eyes sparkling with fierce determination. The shadows howled, retreating momentarily, as if recoiling from her fiery spirit. This fleeting moment of clarity allowed them a glimpse of their family. A flash of laughter, echoing in the peaceful calm just before everything changed. This memory fueled Lily's hope, lifting her spirits. She grabbed Max's hand tightly, holding onto every ounce of love she felt for their family, every hug, every joyful moment. At that moment, the colors of the painting began to change, swirling together and transforming into a brilliant light. Echoes of voices rang out, straining, desperate, reaching toward the children. "Help me! Help us!" It was as if they felt their parents' presence surrounding them. In that illuminating swirl, they began to see them within the paint's swirling depths, struggling and fighting against the insatiable shadows trying to swallow them whole. But it wasn't over yet. The malevolent force leaped at them again, raging violently, like a storm trying to break down their defenses. Dark laughter filled the room, a chilling sound that sent shivers down their spines. "They are ours! You think your love can save them? You are fools!" The shadows hissed, clawing at their ankles, like a group of ravenous beasts, mean and hungry. The fight felt endless, filled with raw emotion. Tears streamed down their faces as they battled against the sinister forces that sought to ensnare them. Each sob shook them to their core. Suddenly, the air shifted again, and the portrait flickered ominously, showing their family members' faces twisted in agony, their mouths open in silent screams that echoed painfully in the silence. "Don't let it take you!" Max yelled again, his voice thick with emotion. They felt strength building in their hearts, the power of love fueling their resolve. Even if it meant making the ultimate sacrifice, they would protect each other at all costs. They promised themselves that no dark force would separate them. Suddenly, they felt a surge of heat radiating from the painting. The warmth felt alive, pulsing with its own heartbeat, demanding more from them. Max voiced his deepest fear. The thought that perhaps, to end it all, one of them would need to merge with it, to unite in the shadowy depths to ensure their family had a chance to escape. A terrible sacrifice. "No! It can't be that way!" screamed Lily with fierce passion, shaking her head defiantly. They had to try another way, anything to find their parents and call them back. "Kelly, don't let it choose us. We can fight together." But the shadows swirled around them, gathering in a powerful torrent of darkness. "You are weak. You'll all join us," hissed the darkest corners of the house, their voices merging into a monstrous roar, triumphing over their cries. Overwhelmed, confusion and fear spiraled within them, twisting together with regret and sadness. "We will never give in," shouted Lily, standing tall as her spirit fought against the grim despair that threatened to drag her down. With a mighty heave, they yanked at the painting, pulling against its cursed grip with every ounce of strength they could muster. They needed to set their family free. In that dreadful moment, a blinding light exploded from the portrait, casting the shadows into oblivion. The figures of their family began to ripple, as if awakening from a deep slumber induced by a terrible dream. Love reached out through the painting, blinding, desperate, shimmering like stars against the consuming darkness. And in that moment, they reached for each other, closing their eyes, feeling the warmth of the love that intertwined them like a protective blanket. "Together!" they cried in unison, feeling every ounce of family strength swell in the depths of their hearts. The light expanded, illuminating everything around them, banishing the suffocating darkness. Then there was quiet, an eerie stillness that enveloped the room, lifting the oppressive weight that had pressed down on them. The portraits were still, but the faces within appeared peaceful, calm, as if they had just awoken from a long nightmare. They felt warmth wrapping around them, holding them close, whispering promises of love forever shared. But as the last echoes of light faded, that warmth began to dissipate. Lily opened her eyes, confusion flooding her mind, heart racing like a drum. The shadows, once banished, returned now angry, more ravenous than before. The chilling laughter echoed through the room again, mocking their moment of victory. What had they done? And then the chilling realization washed over them like frigid water. They had awakened their family, if only for a moment, releasing them briefly from captivity, only for them to be caught again, falling prey to the shadows left lurking in the crevices of the room. It wasn't over. They had paid a price. The family had returned. But what had happened to them? They were now bound to the portrait itself, part of an unholy deal forged with the sinister forces that thrived on pain and despair. Lily and Max now stood still in the thick, heavy silence of panic. The portrait had claimed them. Oh. Heart pounding, Lily felt the presence of her parents trapped alongside them, their laughter now a distant memory. She pleaded inwardly for them to wake. "Mom! Dad!" Max called into the shadows, desperation echoing off the walls. But the only response was the suffocating darkness that enveloped them. The shadows laughed triumphantly, their voices a blend of malice and arrogance, echoing all around and making it feel like the room itself was alive with evil. "Join us!" Ivid. "Your family is ours. There is no escape." "Lily," Max whispered, his voice trembling. "What do we do now?" Lily's mind raced. They had to think. They had fought through darkness once. They could do it again. "We need to find them," she said, determination lacing her voice. "They're still in there somewhere. The love we have can reach them. We can't give up." With newfound resolve, they stepped closer to the portrait. It pulsed with energy, drawing them in, but they stood firm. "It's not over!" Lily shouted, her voice steady as she held onto her brother's hand. "Mom! Dad! You have to hear us!" The shadows writhed, pushing against them like a wall, but they gritted their teeth and pushed back. "We will find you! We believe in you!" Max yelled, tears streaming down his cheeks again. "We love you! We will always fight for you!" As they cried out, the portrait shimmered, and the faces within began to stir, as if awakening to their children's voices. They could see glimmers of recognition in their parents' eyes, flickers of hope igniting amid the chaos. "We're here! We're right here!" Lily shouted as their love ignited a spark that shot through the darkness like a comet blazing across a night sky. A glimmer of light flared in their hearts, pushing back the shadows, and they felt a surge of energy, washing over them with warmth. The laughter of the shadows grew fainter, pushed back by the invincible bond of family. "We won't let you go! You belong with us!" The lingering shadows roared, but their voices sounded weaker, less sure. "Hold on! We won't give up on you!" cried Max, squeezing Lily's hand tightly. "Away for anywhere." Together they stood firm against the dark tide. The shadows battered against them, but they held tight to each other, hearts synced in a rhythm of love and defiance. Then, a bright light exploded from the portrait, transforming the darkness around them into a brilliant display of colors. Lily and Max saw their parents in the swirling light, reaching out to them, eyes wide with recognition, love shining through like stars breaking the night. "Don't give in, for your love is powerful," echoed a voice that resonated with warmth and strength. It was their father, reaching toward them as if trying to bridge the distances that had held them apart for so long. "Come back to us, together!" Lily shouted, feeling her family's love filling her heart, making her braver than the fear that once gripped her. In that moment of unity, the shadows shrieked, furious that their prey was escaping. But Lily and Max wouldn't back down. With every ounce of love they had, they screamed out their family names, their voices blending together, strong as fresh winds sweeping through the trees. The blinding light erupted from their hearts, merging with their parents' spirits, creating a wave of love that washed over the shadows, dissolving them one by one. "You don't own us," Max shouted as they pressed forward, feeling their love pushing them into the light and causing the darkness to recede. Glistening beams poured from the portrait, illuminating the entire room, making everything brighter than the brightest day. The last echoes of despair shattered like glass, and the shadows were scattered, vanishing as the children's love conquered the darkness. The portrait shimmered, and within its walls, their parents smiled, free at last. The sense of oppression lifted, and warmth radiated around them. Lily hugged Max tightly, tears of joy streaming down her face. "We did it! We broke the darkness! We set them free!" The portrait transformed one last time, colors swirling harmoniously. Their family members stepped forward from the depths of the painting, their faces glowing with warmth and love. "You did it, our brave children," their mother exclaimed, wrapping her arms around both of them. "We never stopped believing in you. As they stood united, the shadows that had once threatened to consume them crumbled into nothingness. Amidst the vibrant light, they felt the bond of family, strong, unbreakable, and filled with the kind of love that could overcome any darkness. And so, in that radiant moment where love triumphed over fear, the children and their family embraced, knowing they would always stand together, no matter what shadows may come. They returned home, hearts full of light, ready to face whatever adventures awaited them, together, as one. Lily and Max stood frozen in place, staring at each other, as panic rushed through them like a wild river. The air around them felt thick and heavy, making it difficult to breathe. The portrait hanging on the wall shimmered with an eerie glow, casting strange shadows that danced across the room. Within the frame, they saw the familiar faces of their family. They had always been a source of love and laughter. But now the scene felt all wrong. Each smile appeared twisted and odd, making Lily's heart feel like it was sinking deep into her stomach, like a stone thrown into a lake. "Do you see them?" Max whispered, his voice barely above a tremble. He hugged himself, as if trying to shield himself from the dreadful sight. "They're not themselves." Lily nodded vigorously, as she stared at the painting. It was true. Their family, who used to fill their weekends with adventure and joy, were now trapped in a frozen moment, their faces warped with grim expressions. The once warm and inviting motherly smiles had transformed into sinister grins, and their father's gaze, once filled with love, now held a darkness that made Lily shiver. All around them, shadows swirled like a dark mist, wrapping icy tendrils around their hearts. The laughter that had once filled their home began to echo through the room, but now it was a hollow sound, chilling and strange. It seemed to creep into their thoughts, twisting their sanity. Inside, all Lily could hear was the laughter slowly changing to something darker, a cry that clawed at the edges of her mind, beckoning them closer. Join us forever," it wailed, echoing in the dim corners of the room. Suddenly, the shadows surged towards them with a terrible hunger, ready to engulf them whole. Lily and Max instinctively clasped each other's hands, feeling as if uniting could create a shield against the dark forces swirling around them. They cherished their bond, knowing they would face this together. But deep down, a chilling realization settled within. They were not just facing the loss of their family again. They were in danger of losing their very selves, their spirits, their childhood. "We can't let them see us like this," Lily whispered fiercely, the words barely escaping her lips. She squeezed her brother's hand tighter, feeling the warmth of their connection against the icy grip of despair creeping ever closer. She could almost hear their family's laughter in her mind. The happy times spent building forts out of pillows, the sunlit afternoons at the park, the cozy nights curled up with hot cocoa and bedtime stories. But now those memories felt like distant stars, fading out as shadows came in to consume them. The shadows grew stronger, their ominous presence closing in on the siblings. Lily felt as if the darkness was alive, its grip tightening around her and Max like claws of an unseen beast. The very colors of the room seemed to fade, replaced by shades of gray, as wisps of shadow wrapped themselves around their legs, dragging them down toward the painted chaos. "No, no!" Max cried out, panic bursting forth as he fought to keep his feet planted firmly on the ground. "We can't give in!" They pushed themselves against the encroaching shadows, attempting to resist with every ounce of courage they possessed. But the darkness roared with power, winding its way around them, relentless in its pursuit. "Fight! Fight!" Lily yelled, the sound breaking through the suffocating dread that choked her insides. Her heart raced as she thought about their family. Memories filled with joy, warmth, and togetherness surged past her eyes, each one glowing like a beacon in the darkness. Surely the love they had shared could help them find a way to escape. She clung to those cherished memories, pouring every bit of hope she could muster into them. But the shadows only grew heavier, wrapping around them with chilling precision, snuffing out those bright memories, and replacing them with an empty coldness. Just when it seemed all hope was lost, something incredible happened. The figures in the portrait began to tremble violently, the painted faces shifting in their agony. The once familiar smiles melted away, revealing expressions of true suffering that lay hidden behind the cheerful facade. The faces twisted in pain, mouths wide. But instead of a look of terror directed toward the children, they appeared sorrowful, yearning for understanding. Lily and Max blinked in shock, their hearts pounding. In that moment, they understood the truth like a light breaking through the thickest fog. Their love was powerful enough to awaken their family's spirits, stirring them from their slumber. But it wasn't enough to defeat the dark energy that surrounded them. Each face bore the pain of entangled love and sorrow. Their family had long been chained to this portrait, caught in a web of torment that was both heart-wrenching and beautiful. Fear curled tightly around them, constricting like a snake. As the shadows lifted, they felt a sinister force grasping at their ankles, pulling ever lower. They were not merely shadows in the dark. They were becoming captives, merged with the malignant energy that twisted through this haunted house. As they stumbled backward, desperately trying to escape, the last fleeting glimpse of their family blurred into chaos. Shadows roared like storms around them, consuming everything familiar, until only Lily and Max remained, fighting against the dark tide. But still, it pulled them closer to the painted world, toward the screaming faces trapped within the frame of that eternal portrait. Suddenly, everything changed. A wave of surreal energy engulfed them, and the siblings found themselves entwined within the painted chaos where flesh and canvas merged. Lily felt her pulse quickening, a blasphemous union attempting to bind their spirits to the portrait. A union forged through desperation and sorrow. Their bright childhood innocence faded like distant stars, and they felt as though time had stopped altogether within this endless darkness. As they integrated with their family, they could sense the shared pain of love and loss that resided within each heart. They could feel the weight of every moment that had looking like perfect joy, yet contained deep-seated sadness. The haunting laughter echoed again, but this time it was accompanied by the weeping of the souls captured for eternity. It felt like the shadows were singing a lament, a sorrowful song for all that had been lost. In that moment of despair, they fully understood what had been etched upon the faces of their loved ones. Each face told stories of joy, stricken with tragedy. They were forever trapped in this cycle, where love and sorrow were interwoven like threads in a tapestry, beautiful yet heartbreaking. Children felt their very essence becoming one with the portrait, merging into the shadows of their family. And as the last spark of hope flickered out, they realized their new home was a painted world of despair, forever lost among the haunted portraits, where the twisted smiles and hollow laughter would greet them endlessly. Time itself was meaningless here. It stretched beyond comprehension, and within this realm, they would remain, hidden within the shadows, waiting for the next family to stumble into their eternal trap, the next painting to arrive, to join in the unending cycle of love and loss. The quiet town of Hollow Creek continued to thrive, blissfully unaware of the forsaken spirits bound within the shadows. Each passing day, families came and went, filling their homes with life and laughter, yet unaware of the dark history they were stepping into. Little did they know, they were merely subjects that the portrait longed to paint, destined to join the endless gallery of sorrows nestled within the corners of their darkest dreams. And so, the siblings drifted in this timeless void. Lily and Max together, forever intertwined in the tapestry of love and anguish, their tiny voices drowned out by the echoes of pain, longing for release but knowing it would never come. Trapped within the eternal portrait, they wandered in a world where every cherished memory turned into echoes of a haunted laughter, each face in the painting singing solemnly of loss and hope intertwined like thread and needle, creating a fabric too beautiful yet too tragic to break free.